So welcome back, everyone. Welcome back from lunch. Hope everyone had a good bite to eat and they're ready for the second half here. My name's Chris Lochelle. I'm the VP of Marketing here at PM Square, and I'll be your afternoon MC for all the sessions that we have from here to the end of the day. Now, this morning, we learned about how Trifacta's innovative approach to data prep is really changing the way that data consumers can now control and explore their own data. Now let's take a look at how Incorta is revolutionizing the way that users can now enrich and analyze that data. Now, revolutionizing is a buzzword that's thrown around often in the tech space, and more often than not, it represents something short of revolutionary. That, however, is not the case here. Incorta truly is solving problems that the analytics space has really had forever, in ways and with speeds that we've never seen before. So today we're going to be joined by Mike Nader, Principal Technical Evangelist and Architect, who's going to tell us more about Incorta's direct data platform. And then we'll return to Randy Dawson from PM Square for a solution demonstration. Now, a quick reminder that all attendees watching this presentation will be automatically entered into the drawing for that awesome meat smoker, which I know whoever gets it is going to absolutely love. But first, before we get started, we've got a short message from the Incorta CEO, Osama El-Kadi.
Welcome everyone to the PM Square Business Analytics Conference. We are so excited to be with you today. We have a lot of exciting news that we would like to share with you, and we are so appreciating that PM Square team invited us to be part of this conference. Incorta for a long time being driven by so much innovation that our partners bring to our platform. Together, we go to the largest companies in the world and we're able to deliver things that they never thought it's possible before. Incorta's mission, how can we get all business data, internal or external, to be accessible for business users at the times they need in real time, without having to go through so much work in order for them to be able to do that. We have customers who dream about ideas in the morning, and they are able to deliver these ideas the same day to their business users. That's how we really feel that we're adding value to your business, and we hope that with more and more accessibility for data in real time, you will be able to save a lot of money for your business and also gain a lot of competitive advantage that you'll be able to compete much better and be able to deliver much faster for your customers as well. Thanks to our partners, thanks to PM Square for all the great work that we did together, and we were able to bring so many companies to a new innovative data platform that they are able to deliver more and more business values that they couldn't deliver before. We hope you guys will enjoy that event. It will be beneficial to you, and you get out of this with new innovative ideas. How can you help your business and be the heroes for your business? Thank you, and good luck.
Right. Good afternoon, everybody. Randy and Chris, everybody, can you hear me okay? Just double check, make sure I'm coming through.
Yes, Mike, I can hear you. This is Randy.
Perfect. All right. Well, thank you all for attending today, and thank you for giving us the time. And I'm going to quickly move through just an initial introduction to Incorta, and we'll let you see the important thing, and that's the information Randy's going to present. So Randy and I are going to walk through just an overview of Incorta. I'm just going to talk about what the platform does, really extending on what Osama just presented on, and then Randy's actually going to show it to you in action. As Chris mentioned, my name is Mike Nader. I'm Principal Technical Evangelist for Incorta. I've been with the company for a little over 4 years at this point. Work quite heavily with our partners and quite heavily with PM Square in particular. So I couldn't be more excited to present today. And then Randy Dawson is going to be doing the demonstration. Randy and I work together on a number of clients for Incorta, and think quite highly of his capabilities and he can give you some practical anecdotes about how he has used Incorta to solve complex data issues at clients. Now, Incorta is, when we start talking about it, it's ultimately an analytics platform. You know, this morning you all, I believe, talked to the trifecta platform and how it really revolutionizes, to reuse that word, the capabilities of data preparation and master data management. What Incorta is going to do is really change the process by which you ask questions. And that's what, and get answers to those questions. And that's really what I want to focus on today. And I like this, to start with this quote. I mean, this is Jeff Epstein, is Oracle's ex-CFO, is one of our advisors. And when I first started with the company, I was in the office with him, and somebody, I believe one of our marketing people, asked us a question about what should be keeping professionals up at night, business professionals. And I think my answer was something along the lines of, you know, a system this or a system that, what have you. Jeff was pretty direct, and he said, from his perspective, it was those questions that your team is not asking. That's what should be concerning you, because we've trained people, and I say we, and as an industry, in an analytics space, we've trained users over decades to accept no for an answer, to say, okay, you're going to ask me a question, I'm not going to have that data ready, it's going to take too long, so I'm going to tell you no. And they'll stop asking the difficult questions. We stop really supporting that culture of curiosity, and that's really what we should be supporting. And I think that concept really encapsulates what Incorta is and what it does. I mean, we've really thought or made it seem like over the years that the concept of analytics or business intelligence, the combination of the two, is more like rocket science. And really, it's just about questions and answers. And when I first understood how the Incorta platform was operating, what stood out to me is this is a materially different process by which you're going to go about and ask questions and get answers. And it dramatically streamlines and simplifies that process. But in doing so, not only does it not yield, it actually yields more results. So I'm not going to streamline and give you less. I'm going to streamline and give you more, which is not often the case. I mean, another way to look at it, and when we've all suffered from it and felt this over the years, you're a business user and you have a question and you walk through a traditional process. I spent a long, long time as a consultant. I've done, well, sorry about that, quite a few implementations over the years myself, and that is the process. A user asks a question, we do a requirements and design, and we sit through it, we work through the data, we transform it, we prep it, we finally give it to you, and then another question comes up. And it works, but it relies on the fact that I have to preconceive, or you have to preconceive the questions you're going to ask. Really what Incorta becomes is that place where we can start asking that unanticipated question. Well, when I'm curious as to why is that the case, and I didn't know I was going to ask that a week ago, or the world changes because of a given business situation, whether it's our current one or the one we ran into last year with tariffs, or something that's going to come up next year, you're going to be able to adapt to those changes. And that's the value Incorta is going to be bringing. Simple example from one of our recent clients is, this is the process they were doing, and this is the slide that they put together to illustrate the capabilities and the settings. What was taking them 5 to 7 weeks to do for their user community, now they're doing in less than 1. And they're doing it with greater detail, greater fidelity, and more ability for the users to be curious and ask those different questions. And so what Randy's going to show you today is really a full process. It is going to go from the concept of, I'm going to connect into data and I'm going to pull data through into the Incorta engine. I'm going to handle that data in Incorta, but I'm not going to necessarily have to change it in the way you would traditionally do. And I'll let Randy get into that. We're going to present it in a simplified fashion, but ultimately you're then going to be able to use that. You can use it in Incorta's UI, you can use it in Tableau, you can use it in Cognos. I've got a number of clients there. But what Incorta is as a platform has the capabilities that span across that analytic spectrum. And tomorrow I'm leading the training, the hands-on session for those of you attending. I'm not going to dwell too much in the architecture today, but just to give you a preview, we will walk through this in some detail tomorrow. And that's probably the only slide I use as we go through and play with Incorta hands-on. But I really appreciate you giving us the time today. And I'm going to turn this over to Randy and let him show you what the platform does and how it operates. One last point, just a quick plug. If you can, I am running the training session tomorrow, the hands-on session for the Bacon attendees. Would love to have you attend, let you play with the platform a little bit. We'll talk about ways in which you could even spin up your own instance of it on our Incorta cloud and let you put your own data in. But I'll be running that tomorrow. And for those of you who have signed up, thank you. You'll be getting your usernames and passwords from me later today, but you all should have received an email from me confirming your registration and giving you the link to the training server we're going to use. And then finally, last slide, again, looking forward to seeing who ends up winning the smoker later this afternoon. So we will be announcing that towards the end of the day today. So I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing now and turn it over to Randy. Thank you so much, Chris.
Okay. I am allegedly showing a screen here. I hope I am. It should have the Incorta, excuse me, webpage on it.
You're all good, Randy. We can.
Thanks. Mike, I know you and I have a common aversion to PowerPoint slides, so I don't blame you for going through fairly quickly on that. I'm going to echo your recommendation for folks to at least check out the training tomorrow. That architecture slide, if you care about architecture and servers and infrastructure and things like that, it is really important. And as Mike could tell you tomorrow, and I'll just allude to it today, the part of the way that Incorta is able to deliver this change or deliver data in a different way has to do with what they call their direct data mapping engine. And without dwelling too much on that architecture, what it allows you to do is to adapt and extend and append data very quickly to something that exists. So just like in Trifecta, we were trying to shorten that cycle from pick up the phone and call IT and then wait while they decide to prioritize it and put it in the queue and then finally get it back out to you to see if they've got it right. We want to do the same thing here with Incorta. And what it does is shorten that cycle. So if you have something existing already and you decide, hey, I need to, we've seen the word enrich a bunch of times during today's presentations. I need to enrich that by adding some data, whether it's from the same data source or from a different data source. Incorta doesn't just make that easy. There are other tools, with a GUI interface that'll make it nice to click and kind of connect things together, but it makes it fast, and it's because of the way that architecture works. So I know I said I wouldn't dwell a lot on it, and then I spent a few minutes on it, but I really do encourage you to take a look at the session tomorrow and any follow-up questions you have as well. We don't have a lot of time budgeted for this session, so I am going to jump in, and just to set the stage, I've done a little bit of pre-work here, and what I want to do is I want to go out and I want to collect some data, collect some metadata, collect some data, bring that into Incorta so we can see what that process is like for a couple of reasons, but mostly just to show the process and then to show the idea about how easy it is. Now, this one we're going to do about 45 minutes in length of time. So, we're not going to come into a client and say, 45 minutes and you're done. That's not realistic. But what it should give us an idea of is how to do this, where the time is spent, and then what the capabilities are. Right, and then on the other end of this, we'll take a look at some dashboards I put together, and we'll put together one from the data we work with here. Excuse me. And then from there, one of the few slides we saw leading up to this showed the the BI tools that Incorta can feed. PM Square, we're kind of partial to Cognos, so we can feed Cognos, but we can also feed Tableau or Power BI. And for those of us that still live in the Excel world, right, we can get into Excel as well. So there's a lot going on with that. This won't go into a ton of depth, but if you see something along the way where you have questions about can this, will this, how do you do this, please do put those in the chat window. If we don't get them right at the end of this session, we'll get them tomorrow, or we'll get the follow-up email out with those questions. All right. So here's the setup. Those of you that have ever seen us give a demonstration about Cognos or worked with Cognos know that they have a sample database called the Great Outdoors. We took the Great Outdoors database and we extended it a bit. So we updated it to run through 2020. And then we added a bunch of rows to it. because one of the things that Incorta does really well is it processes really high volumes of data really quickly, right? So rather than digging into the database and kind of getting into all the clicks and buzzes and passwords, I went ahead and I set up those connections already. You can see there's one out here called PM Square Bacon's SQL Server, SQL Server. All right, that's no surprise that's going to our SQL Server database, the great outdoors. We have about 133, 134 million rows of order details in there. So we did extend that quite a bit just to put some volume behind this and give us an idea of how this works at volume, and then as well to see how our other tools work as volume, right? So we can use that sample set in different places. Excuse me. And then if you were watching the trifecta demonstration earlier, when VJ took some data that had product line and product type information, and then had a product review data in it, and he cleaned that all up and dropped it into an S3 bucket on trifecta side. Well, I've got a similar S3 bucket here with a similar file in it. Now, I didn't take his cleaned up version because I wanted to show that Incorta can do some of that as well. But in a real world example, it would be a really nice flow to say, hey, bring in all these disparate sources of data, text data in this case, or Excel data, clean it up, drop it out there somewhere, and integrate that in directly with what's coming in through the SQL Server, right? And what we want to do is we want to make this go, excuse me, kind of quickly, kind of easily, and walk through as best we can. Now, what I also want to do is avoid saying, click, 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 and you're done. Because in the real world, right, wizards are nice, but they don't always work. And there is going to be some subject matter expertise involved. So got kind of a sample of that. It's not exactly real world, but we'll see that as we walk on as well. So real quick look at the interface here. This is the Incorta web page where we land. We've got content. That's going to be business-facing user content. Scheduler, kind of obvious what that is. But then we've got these two guys right here in the middle. There's something called the business schema and something called the schema. Now, if you're used to other tools and used to kind of the basic BI or analytic architecture, you have kind of an extraction layer and then you have the semantic layer. Same thing going on here, where we have the extraction layer, or what we would call a physical layer, the schema, and then a presentation or a display layer, semantic layer with the business schema. Important to note here that as an author in Incorta or an administrator in Incorta, I can use one or the other of those. It could be one of it can be both if I want it to be. I'm not locked into it. They're just two different kind of takes on the theme, depending upon what I want to accomplish. If I'm building this for myself, for self-use, and I already know what I'm doing already with it, I might want to just stick with the physical schema and go. If I'm building this to disseminate, either via another BI tool like Cognos, or just within Incorta itself, but I want to pretty it up, I've got that business schema available to me as well. So we're going to take a look at both of those and just see how that works and how we can get that functionality in place to make it really easy for people to not only build this, but also to use it and share it, right? Now there is one piece, we won't go deep into detail on this. Again, it's a good follow-up question if you're thinking about implementing this or you have questions about it. But we're not going to dwell too much on the security piece, except to say that everything that I'm doing in here, I'm doing as an administrator. So I've got access to all the database side, I've got access to the S3 bucket, I've got access to everything in Incorta. But you should know from a governance point of view that Incorta does incorporate security, both its own built-in security, and it can incorporate external security repositories as well. So even though we're going to see this roll through pretty quickly without applying different securities or dividing this up so different users get different views, be aware that it's there, and that's not a worry that you have as if you were just pulling this out into text files and pushing it out to the world. We can't fully secure data, excuse me, including the behind the scenes stuff. There. So that's about 5 minutes worth of setup. That's a lot. Let's dig in and start working here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by clicking on this schema. Now you might remember that's our physical layer, our extraction layer. I've got a couple of samples built out here, some of that pre-work. Loaded Go Sales we'll talk about in just a few minutes after we do our initial model. This Go Sales AWS S3 bucket, I just built that so we didn't have to fiddle around showing or hiding the keys because that is a secure S3 bucket. but it's just like any other S3 instance. You could have that open, you could have it secured or whatnot. Excuse me. And so I pulled in that same data that VJ was working with earlier in Trifacta, just in closer to its raw form, so we can see how that works. And what we want to do is we're going to build a new schema here that's going to incorporate the SQL Server Go Sales data, and then we'll bring in this data from that file that's sitting in the S3 bucket as well. And nicely, Incorta is going to treat that all as one thing, right? So along the way, we'll delve into that a bit more. As a rule, I'm not terribly a big fan of wizards, but I do like to look at the schema wizard. If you've worked with other tools, it's similar to what you've probably seen before there. But the schema wizard is going to do a couple things for us. I click on it. The first thing it's going to do is it's going to show us, where do you want to get our data? What should we call this? Bacon demo Go Sales. Okay. And then when we talk about this being really easy to use, this is what we're talking about. We touch that SQL Server database. It's showing me the things that I have permission to. So I have permission to the Go Sales database that's sitting out there. Got my different schemas or owners, right? Database qualifiers. And if I look at the Go Sales schema, excuse me, I could start to pull data out, right? And when I say pull data out at this point, all I'm doing is modeling. So yeah, I want to look at order details and order header. I know we're going to be an order information reporting tool here. I better find out where the sales branch is, the sales country. If you've seen previous demos, you're real familiar with this already, right? Order method, I want to know how people are placing orders. And I'm going to go get some product information as well. Now, typically in a training course or a demo, we do product type, and product line. So we'll bring those three things in here. We don't always bring in the product name lookup, but I am going to bring that in because if I'm reporting on products, I want to know what their name is, right? And I'm going to bring in the brand as well, mostly because in the demo database, those present two different data challenges or data structure ideas. We want to know how to be able to deal with them in Incorta. And just, again, it's a demo, so we want to see how we can do that fairly quickly. Okay? Now, importantly, I've got 10 different tables selected out here from the Go Sales schema. I can always go to a different schema if I need to. I'm going to get some retailer information out here. And get some retailer site type. Retailer, I'll grab a few tables from here as well. Okay. And if I click on the selected button, you can see I've got 13 tables selected all together. Over here on the right-hand side, if I click on a table, it's giving me information about the data type. Kind of importantly, it's looking out here for these functions of keys, dimensions, and measures. And that's important because Incorta in the background here is pulling out primary key, foreign key relationships. And when I click on next, it's going to ask me, hey, based upon what I know about these primary and foreign key relationships, do you want me to create joins for you? There's create joins between these tables if they're detected. Sure. And when I click on create schema, it's going to do exactly what it says. It's out there reading the metadata, it's pulling that in, and it's starting to create joins or relationships between all these tables. So you can see on the screen, here's my list of tables, right? Retailer, retailer type, etc. And if I scroll down, here's my joins, and there's 12 joins defined in there. Now, if you can look across the screen and it makes sense to you, more power to you. I kind of get lost in a screen like this. It all looks the same. It's the gray tones aren't necessarily conducive to real good analysis. So Incorta makes it easy for me to see what I've actually built by building this diagram for me. And this ERD diagram that's going to pop up on the screen, again, it'll look familiar to you if you're used to these kinds of tools. Come on, now there you are. You can see different views of the same thing. Let's bring one up that makes it pretty easy to look at here. Yeah, it's pretty good. Sorry for the small font, but you can tell out here we got our order details and our order header, order method, etc. We'll list off all 13 tables. But one of the things you want to notice real quick is that there's a bunch of arrows out here, and those arrows are pointing in different directions. Okay, so a little bit of tech stuff in the background. natively, when Incorta brings data in and it brings this table information in, what it does by default is it creates something that acts as a left outer join would act, right? So between order header and branch, order header would be the left on the left outer join. Now, again, I said we wouldn't go too far into architecture and go down that road. Really importantly, and the reason that we're bringing in these 13 tables is the outer part of that outer join doesn't have the same cost as it would in a relational database. So in a relational database, part of the reason, right, we're building these star schemas and we're doing the data value lookups and things like that is because those joins cost so much in processing time. Incorta doesn't care, right? It just wants to know how these things relate. And by making that an outer join versus an inner join, right, it's not hitting us in that cost department. So we're doing really good with that. What it does do though is it sets up this scheme where it says, okay, if these are outer joins, it's kind of like a fact and dimension setup. So if I've got an order header, that order header is going to run through a sales branch, right? So I've got a fact out here, there's a bunch of headers, right? And a branch, many to one. And the order header to order method, order details to order header, etc. Now, if we look at this, a couple of things might jump out if we're looking carefully. One of them is the arrows all seem to flow quite nicely. Order detail, order header to branch, branch to country. And then retailer site points to country, and retailer sites points to retailer, and retailer site, retailer points to retailer type. So that arrow being backwards tells me a little something about the database and the data, and that the wizard did a good job here, but it didn't do a perfect job. Right? And then we'll see the same thing if we look down here at product name, look up to product. If that arrow is looking a little bit odd, a little bit out of place because it's not pointing in that same direction as the other ones. Right? Mike, who did our introduction here, he likes to say when you are building a query in Incorta, Incorta can always follow the arrows. So if you start off with order detail information, it can give you all the information you want about products and product brands and product types, but it can't run against the arrows and give you this product name. So we're going to need to fix that, right? And then we'll fix the same thing up here. We're going to get these arrows. Now, I know nobody really cares about the great outdoors, right? We've been using this thing for 20 plus years and nobody has ever cared about the actual data in the great outdoors. But it is important to know we got this very quickly, right? This is a legitimate schema for Incorta to ingest. We don't have to do the star schema in the background. We don't have to pull from a warehouse, although we can. The performance inside of Incorta isn't dependent upon limiting those joins the same way it would be in a relational database. Right? But that doesn't mean we have to, we can't, fix the model. And in this case, we want to take a look and see what's going on with this product name lookup. Okay? So I'm going to double click on this. If I look at the product name lookup, I'm going to have a few columns. There's 4 columns out here, right? The product number, product language, product name, and product description. And the reason this primary key foreign key relationship didn't flow nicely in Incorta is because this table is designed to show how multilingual data might be in a database. Excuse me.
Is for every where there are multiple rows, and those rows represent different languages. If I look out here at our SQL, and I know I'm kind of clicking through quickly out here, you can see the product number is repeated on every row. So instead of a one-to-many relationship, right now we've got a many-to-many, and that's no good. But Incorta does give me the ability to modify this. So if I do that, now my product numbers are going to be a unique key, and I'm going to get the English language name out of it. Click on done. Incorta is now remembering that definition. This is going to be a little bit different representation than what's in the database because we're filtering just on, just on the language of English. And then what we want to do is we want to come out here and we want to look at this join structure. Right now it's called a child join. The child join just means it's a left-hand part. I'm going to get rid of that. We don't want that join in there. What we do want is a parent join, which will put it on the right-hand side. So here, I want my product table to be the child, product number, product name lookup, product number, and pretty easy interface here to make a change, but importantly, we can still go back to the diagram. Done. You can see our direct data mapping is happening. That's Incorta magic. Now, when I look at the diagram, moments from now, when that diagram pops up, if I follow the arrows, order details to product, and product give me the product name. So that arrow is a little thing on the screen, but it's important in terms of the modeling that we get that right. I don't want to take too long on this. I know I've been talking a while already. Oops. There goes my webcam. All right, make this a little bigger for us. Excuse me. I've got this arrow here. So retailer is giving me retailer type. Retailer site is giving me retailer. And then I've got country out here. Now, again, just to shortcut this a little bit, what's happening is that country is being used as a lookup table for two different dimensions. All right, so I've got a sales branch. That sales branch reports to a country. And I've got retailer information, and that retailer site reports to a country. It's just a little modeling thing. Again, it's not a unique modeling thing in the world, but it's something that we can take care of. And we can do that, excuse me, by coming out here to the retailer site. You just get rid of that join between retailer site and the country lookup table. Now that's going to leave that retailer site out there as an island. That's not going to help us too much. What we really want to do is join that back to the order header. Make that order header the left-hand side. I'm looking for that retailer site code as the key. I'm going to join it to retailer site by retailer site code. Excuse me. All right, we've got just a few more things to do if we're getting a little bit tired already of our physical schema. I do want to bring the diagram up one more time after this, let's say. We can see now that order header belongs to the retailer site, retailer, and retailer type. So again, those arrows are all coming outward for our basic transaction table, and our model is solid. Now we did want to add one more piece of information in here. On my product type. And you'll recall that we had that information that was sitting out in the S3 bucket. So I'm going to go from product type. Can you remember that multilingual demo with the product name lookup? We had product names in different languages in different rows. Here we have product types in different languages in different columns. So I'm going to take my product type in English. Go out to that S3 bucket. I'm going to get my file, and I'm going to join that based on product type. And just like that, what we've done is now we've integrated this in so that we have two different sources of data, right? The SQL Server database, the S3 bucket. If I look at the diagram, click, that S3 bucket is marked out here, and we can get to that right from the order details, right? But again, importantly, I don't want to repeat myself too much. As we load this into Incorta, that no longer becomes a performance hit. So we're not bringing data from S3 and data from SQL Server onto an app server, trying to stitch those together, trying to build a result set and then render that result set into a picture or a list or a cross-tab report. All of this data is going to come into Incorta, be integrated in Incorta, and then treated as one data set. So that engine in the background isn't hurt by the fact that we have all these joins out here, and it's not hurt by the fact that these sources are coming from different places. Now, while we're in here working, there's also some of that enrichment that we've been talking about, and the additions and the extensions we've been talking about along the way, different sessions. I'm just going to do one or two out here so we can see how it works. If I look at my order details, we've got the kind of typical things, right? We've got the quantity, we've got the cost, we've got the price, we've got the sale price. In Incorta, we can add what's called a formula column, which is just like adding a calculation. Like I said, I'll just do a quick one up here. So I'm going to do extended until I've done this before, because it's pre-filling for me. Extended cost is a measure. And all I'm going to do here is I'm going to take the quantity and I'm going to multiply it by the cost. So I'm going to go into order details, take the quantity, multiply it by cost, validate that. Okay. Now, I'm going to click on done, and when I do, if we watch the top of the screen, we're going to see that direct data mapping progress bar coming up again. Here it comes. There it is, direct data mapping. So what Incorta is doing in the background then is it's saying, hey, I know this belongs to every row of data on that physical schema. I'm going to go ahead and pre-do that. I'm going to pre-compile it. So again, we're not bringing that data in and then trying to calculate something based on the post load. What we're doing is we're giving Incorta the information it needs to build that directly. It's going to work really quickly, row by row by row, but inside of the Incorta engine. Now, I'm going to do a little bake show magic here. What we need to do then is we need to give Incorta that data, really candid. To do this many rows of data, 133 million rows in the fact table, it takes about 6 minutes for us to pull that across our 2 AWS environments or 3 AWS environments. I don't think anyone wants to watch this for 6 minutes. And so what I'm going to do is, this one's already loaded, and it's got a few more of those enhancements in it. So that if I look at the order details in here, you'll see we've got more formula columns built. Right, we've got that cost, we've got extended revenue, extended base revenue, right, extended profit. And I've just built those out so that we can have a little bit more data to play with as we work through this. But that 6 minutes that we just didn't look at, loaded, you can see the numbers out here. It's a little over 133 million. The screen's going to show us 134 million for our biggest table. Excuse me. And it loaded that out. Again, architecture, but it loaded it into the Incorta server, where Incorta's now got that in Parquet files, and it's going to use its query engine to be able to move through that really quickly, including using those calculations. Now, if I'm building this for myself, I can be done. Right? What I mean by that is, if I click on Explore Data, I can just start working right now on doing analysis. Okay, well, let's see out here. Pull in the product line. Maybe we'll change this into an aggregate. Now, there's a lot of stuff going on here. You can see all the different choices you have for displays and dashboards. And of course, when we make that externally available, the world is your oyster. Right? Just do a quick example here. From the order details, oh, let's get that extended profit. And Incorta in the background, it's trolling through those 134 million records. So there's our extended profit for our different product lines. Right? Excuse me. And we can go through, we can add in other measures from there. Can maybe see what our extended cost is. You get the idea as we walk through. We can enhance this however we want to. I did add a couple of other enhancements just to make our lives a little bit easier. So here's another one of those formula columns. Right? We had an order date natively in our data. I added the order year in. See, Incorta's going out there. It's doing the aggregation across those 134 million rows, 133 million rows. And boom, there's my years, different product lines, and the measures that line up to it. Right? So right away, we're able to drag that data in. If I were doing this in real time, it'd be 6 minutes longer. But just in the 26 minutes we've taken to do this, we have something where we can now perform analysis on the data that's in the database. We've extended that ability to include the AWS data, right? Or the S3 data that's going to give us that market review date. And we've added in these calculations to get the extended cost and the profit, the order year, and the order month, et cetera. So in the real world, you know, a half hour is probably not going to be your target for an Incorta project. But the idea is that you can get to it really quickly. And that's true. We've done this against JD Edwards and the other big engines where we can pull that data in. And so long as you have some subject matter expertise to understand those kind of nuances with the joins, get there really quickly and get something up and running to work with. Okay. Excuse me, let me just cancel that. I'll get back to where we were. So that's where we go into this physical schema where we've added value, we brought the data in. Now, important to know, when I clicked on that and I did that analysis, I wasn't going back to SQL Server, wasn't going back to the S3 bucket. This is all resident on the Incorta server, right? So we've got a nice big Incorta server in the background holding that data and making these queries come out pretty quickly for us. That's going to work if I want it for me. If I want to share this, if I want to extend this and make it better and make it more accessible to people who might not like table names and column names, you know, we don't like codes for columns or, you know, AE145 for table names, things like that. We want to make things look really nice. That's where this business schema layer comes in. And if we look at the business schema, I've got a couple of them written out here already. This is where we can do things like organize our thoughts, organize our business subjects. Here I've got KPIs and orders and products and retailers, right? And it's also where we can go back and start to rename things. My products, I've got that marketing reviewer and marketing review date, right? Now, excuse me, that marketing reviewer, you remember upstream back from the Trifecta demo, that was originally called product line. So it was nice to get that cleaned up, but in this case, it wasn't. Right? I pulled it in, it still said product line. They didn't have VJ's file, I was using an old one. And I was able to change that in the physical schema that flows through right to here to make that really easy again for a user. We don't want to confuse it by having confusing column names or table names. This is all designed to be easy stuff. This is also where we can go back in and add other calculations. So I've got a calculation out here, GP or gross profit percent. Okay. And I created this in the business schema because this is not a calculation that's additive, right? It's not going to come in row by row by row like the physical schema does, right? And those calculations that are happening as we're dragging in data, quantity times cost kind of thing. For the gross profit percent, the timing of that is important. I assume a lot of us already know what the calculation is for gross profit. I just want to pull it up in here real quick so we can see it. Got the formula button here. Let's make that big so it formats nicely. And you can see what's going on here. This is a post-aggregation calculation. So I'm going to take the sum of the revenue minus the sum of the cost, give me my profit. I'm going to divide that by the sum of the revenue, and it's going to give me my gross profit percent. But what this business schema now allows me to do is take all those calculations that I did in the physical schema and add another layer of value, right? A person using the Incorta analytics dashboards, they can do that calculation. There's all kinds of tools out there for filtering and calculating data inside of the dashboards and the insights for Incorta. But the more I can build for them in this business view, the better off I'm going to be. So that's not a lot different than other tools, but it is nice to see that Incorta's got that capability built in. And again, it's a matter of how fast do we want to get this out in the hands of others? How fast do we want to get this to market? Excuse me, let me click on done here as well. Now I have a few of these things built, and I built 3 of them just to kind of get this in so we can have an idea going forward of how this is going to work. I built it in Go Sales Incorta. That's what we just looked at. And we can go in there. What I didn't do was organize anything in folders, but you have that ability too, depending upon how extensive your data is, you know, and how complex things are, and you know, the metadata to look at. But I broke that into views so that we could see that nicely broken out, very easy to navigate. I've got a second one out here called Go Sales External. And in Go Sales External, this is designed to be pushed out to a Tableau or Power BI or to a Cognos, where it's all under one view. So you can see I've got the same stuff out here. If I scroll up and down, it's basically the same as the other, but it's under one view. And the reason for that, this is a great deal for Incorta as well, is if I push that to Cognos, and in Cognos I would set up a data server, data module, point back to this schema, any query that I do in Cognos then can be pushed back to the Incorta engine. So the Incorta engine, again, I said no architecture, and then I'm talking about architecture, but the direct data mapping engine is what makes it so fast. So if I'm rolling through, say, instead of 133 million rows, if I'm running through 500 million, 600 million, 700 million, huge volumes of data, billions even of rows. In fact, for the QA session, if somebody, if you want to ask the question about how much we could scale, Mike has some really great stories about how we could scale up to really large volumes of data, right? But if we can have those really large volumes of data, and we can combine that with an external reporting tool using the Incorta engine, it makes trolling through those values, those volumes, and bringing in actionable insights really quick and really easy. So nice to know that in the business schema, we can have that same data set up for both internal Incorta use and external, different tool, outside of Incorta's use, but still get the advantage of that engine. I did pull a third one in here. This is a little bit in the weeds, but the analyzer view is basically a subset. I want to use that when I want things to work really quickly. And that one gets read into memory. So they become really lightning fast if you want to look at a subset of your data, right? Something really quick. Excuse me. So we can use any of these three. If we wanted to, we could use all these three, right? So if you had different areas, different business areas, and you wanted to mix and match, bring different insights together from different areas, you could do that. You're not limited to one. And they're all useful outside of Incorta, as I mentioned, in Cognos or Tableau or other tools. But inside of Incorta, they're all available in what's called a dashboard. I've got a couple of them built here already. I'm just going to pull one up so we can see it. Excuse me, this product line analysis. And you can see I've got 4 what we call insights. If you're looking at a dashboard, there are 4 frames or 4 tabs. Came up really quickly off those 133 million rows of data. Get things broken out by product line. How are they contributing to the profit margin, 2019 versus 2020? How do my sales go across the years, right? Excuse me. For the number of orders, this guy is extended profit over the years. So it's not, it's probably not going to be an award-winning dashboard, I'll admit to that, but it is a really easy thing to put together. And we've got just a few more minutes here before we wrap up. So I'm going to put one together based on what we just saw, just to show you, how quickly we can do that. Let's see, got a dashboard in here. Product, brand, breakdown. So like I say, that window or that tab or that frame, we call it insight into Incorta. And you said product brand. So I'm going to go out here. Here's my business views. We'll go ahead and use our Incorta business view. Make this a little bit easier for us to navigate. And under product, let's see, I'm going to bring in the product line, product type. And we said we were going to bring the product brand as well. Put that in there. And remember this marketing review date that was sitting out there inside of S3. Bring that in as well. Let's see how much money we're making from these guys. Let's see that extended profit, that's a dollar amount, so do that. All right, we've got camping equipment out here. We got the Canyon Mule brand, we've got product type of packs. That's going to be reviewed on the February 1st, and that's how much money we've made from it. Okay. Just save that. Excuse me. Now what that's doing is that's saving that. I can share that out. I can give it to other folks. I can let other people author it and edit it if they want to. really nicely. I can duplicate it myself. So now I'll have two of those if I want to change a filter or change that mapping around a little bit so I can analyze different things. I could change that into into a graph or a chart and make a single KPI. I could do all kinds of different things. And again, if you do the session tomorrow where we do the training part of this, we'll get in a little bit more to this end of things. We talk about how we can make prettier pictures and do nice things. But with the time we had here, what I'm hopeful we saw was that we could go from nothing, right, just the start, where we defined a couple of data sources, bring data in, make modeling changes as needed, extend that data, right, and enrich, to use that term again, enrich that data by adding calculations, make it user-friendly by going into that semantic layer, that presentation view with the business schema, and then finally push that out and make it available either as a view, right? So if I want to push this out, just let people take a look at it. They can take a look at these dashboards, or for myself, if I want to analyze this, it's really easy for me to just start clicking and dragging and linking across at least a fair volume of data and getting those results really quickly. Excuse me. Okay, I am trying to keep an eye. If you see me glancing down, I'm keeping an eye on a stopwatch, and I want to make sure we get time for some of these questions. So let's go ahead and turn that back over if we can. I'll leave this window up, but Mike Nader's still out here. And Mike Homer, if you want to open up a mic, or whoever our moderator is, open us up for questions, feel free to do that too.
Yeah, thanks so much, Mike and Randy. Excellent presentation. We do have a number of questions here. We've got about 8 minutes to answer them, so we'll likely not have enough time to get to them all. As you were going through that presentation, the thing that really stuck out to me is the feedback that we get from our customers. When we talk to Incorta, the prevailing sentiment is so often that of skepticism. The claims that are made by Incorta about what it can do and really how powerful it can be. And those are skepticisms we shared too as a partner when we first became aware of Incorta and decided to partner with them. And I can absolutely vouch for the power of the technology. I can vouch that our technical team stands behind it 100%. Very impressive. So let's get to some of these questions here. So one question here is really getting to the core of the line between where Incorta stops and a front-end BI tool like Cognos starts. And so the question is, I'm trying to understand how Incorta would compare to using a data module or data set to accomplish the same objective.
All right, so since Mike's not jumping in on that, I'm going to. I'll take kind of the first part of that question. Incorta's bread and butter, where it really works well and where its power really shines, is really processing high volumes of data really fast, right? It's that data engine and the architecture we were alluding to earlier, which is Incorta's strongest suit. The dashboards that you can build in Incorta are nice, and as you saw with the dropdown, there are a lot of options and things available, but Incorta's not built for pixel perfect reporting. Or incorporating into, the example I use is from a bank that I worked with, where they were doing form letters and trying to incorporate data inside a form letter. It's just not where Incorta plays, right? So where the third-party tool would come in primarily is if you're trying to use the Incorta engine for processing these massive volumes of data, you like that power, but you also want to combine that with the pixel perfect reporting. That's where you can push that out, mapping, data visualizations, things like that. Excuse me. I see Mike's joined us on the chat here as well. Mike, I don't know if you want to add to that.
No, I think that, yeah, no, I thought it was a perfect answer. I mean, yeah, Incorta's deep value propositions in the engine, how we handle the data. We want to integrate, in fact, open ourselves up from a standards perspective to any number of other platforms from a data consumption reporting, because we're not going to force a user community to make a change to a different interface. So Cognos is a phenomenal interface, does phenomenal things, and it's a prime example of where you can do something like that in a Cognos platform where I'm not going to do that in Incorta, but Incorta handles the data in a unique way. And so while we've got the capability of that really true self-service, that ad hoc analysis, and really I'm a big fan of our dashboarding UI, but deep value propositions in the engine and how we're handling the data.
This next question is for Mike. And what do you see your clients and customers really doing differently with regards to their deployments? Like obviously Incorta is a very different way of solving some long-standing IT and analytics challenges. So how do Incorta customers really solve those problems and do those deployments differently?
So I mean, there are any number of examples. I think the one that probably stands out, or the one that the recurring theme comes back. We're doing an implementation right now for a large manufacturer out in Silicon Valley, hardware for computers and servers, things of that nature. And one of the first use cases the business team went after was what they're called their drill to detail report. And it's a bit of a misnomer because what Randy was showing earlier is the ability, we've pulled the data in, we've replicated, I've got the data at full fidelity. So if I see a pattern, I want to understand a root cause of something, you click on that number and you can see every transaction that tied into it. And over the years, we've heard that called, a drill through or drill to detail or a master detail, pick any number of names. And it became something when I was doing implementations, it was always a sort of phase 2 activity. Okay, we'll do that when we have time, and because I got to know where you're going to click and what you're going to get to. What I'm seeing users really take advantage of quickly, and their primary use case to start with very often is that a user they see a number, they see a pattern, it could be a variance, it just could be anything. And I can click on that and then get to the ledger, the subledger, all those details that tie into it. I can do that and click, and that's an out-of-the-box capability. I don't have to make that a phase 2. And so I see that a lot at our clients, and it's one that just constantly comes back. And that implementation we were just talking through, that's legitimately the first thing they did. We said, we need that right now.
This next question here is really more of a nuts and bolts question. It's, can Incorta ingest JSON?
Sorry about that, I had to mute on. So we do have a JSON connector that we are releasing right now. And so we also have done implementations where we have taken data streaming out of Kafka in JSON format into Incorta. So our direct JSON connector, forgive that phrasing, is on the roadmap, and actually I have this, I'm personally testing it myself, so it is something that's going to come out very, very quickly. But today, if I've got a JSON source, I can pull that into Incorta and I can process that in, but I've got to do a little bit of extra work on the Incorta side. We're eliminating that with a direct connector.
So this next question really speaks to how to bring Incorta into an organization. And so this question comes from someone who has a mature EDW. They have current tools in place from a front-end analytics perspective. So for those customers, where and how does Incorta typically first get implemented within a customer?
Sure. So if you think about that more traditional workflow, I'm going to take the data from the sources. So I've got an EDW in that question. I'm going to process that data, put it into an enterprise data warehouse of you pick your particular flavor and shape. And then to really use that to start enriching it, you start building out your analytic data marts, whether that's an AP, an AR, an HR, any number of specific analytic subject areas. Those are then generally mapped into a semantic layer and presented out to the users. So where Incorta tends to go in, very first things, you start weaning off that data mart tier. No platform's going to come in tomorrow and say, okay, hey, throw away that data warehouse that you're doing. And in fact, depending on the nature of the volumes and everything you're doing, that may not be ever practical. But where if I still want to spin up those analytic subject areas, not only can I start eliminating the ones from a data mart perspective that are there, but if I want to build something new, I can lay Incorta side by side. So if you're thinking your architecture flowing across from source to warehouse to data mart, let's move those up, drop Incorta in. Now instead of going through that processing and that iterative loop on the data mart side, feed the data into Incorta from the warehouse and from the source system, tie both together. And if I want to start getting rid of some of those data marts, that's tends to be a good place to start. But it will normally start in that tier and then start eating into those other data marts, so I can just get rid of those.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. So that will be all the time. Oh, sorry, Randy, go ahead and add on if you'd like.
Yeah, I was just going to add on real quick. The question was, I think was, when do you start or how does Incorta get introduced? And I was at a customer where they're a good candidate. And the answer to that question at that customer was their data warehouse was working, right? And they were able to analyze data and they were able to get answers. And the keyword was except, right? Except when I ask these questions. And then when I click on the run button, everything dies, right? Because the volumes of data were such that they just couldn't process that data into the tool they were using, right? So if everything's working, if it's not broke, don't fix it. But Incorta's real strength is those volumes of data. And if you say everything's working except when I need this, and I need this is really important, that's when you want to start looking at Incorta.
It makes perfect sense. So again, thank you to both Mike and Randy for the presentations, for answering the questions that we do have. We do have a litany of unanswered questions here. Those will all be answered in time. So be patient there. We'll be sure to get back out to you and get you answers there. Now, as I referenced at the beginning of the Q&A here, the prevailing sentiment from many customers is that of skepticism. Can Incorta do what it says it does? And there's no better time or no better chance to find out than joining our Incorta workshop tomorrow. So Mike is leading a hands-on session tomorrow at 1:30 Eastern time, and you should definitely all be a part of that. So you can go to bacon.pmsquare.com and register today, and then be sure to experience it yourself and have an opportunity to get some hands-on experience and start to see it for yourself. So we are going to take a short break now. We'll be returning in 8 minutes for our next presentation. But again, thank you, Randy. Thank you, Mike, and we'll be back in 8 minutes.
So thank you, guys.